Hi everyone, a very quick video here. We need to address something which just dropped on Twitter and concerns a series of major misunderstandings about the fossil record and about evolution from a man who is somehow one of the world's most influential political pundits, despite seemingly being wrong about everything, as way too many YouTubers have already pointed out. But this time he's wrong about something which concerns paleontology and evolutionary biology, so I can actually stick my neck into the ring here. That man, as you will have seen from the title of this video, is Tucker Carlson, who said some very strange things on Joe Rogan's podcast recently. At least I think it's recently. The video appeared yesterday on Twitter.
But if evolution is real, and if there is this constant, I don't know, but it's visible. Like you can measure it in certain animals.
You can measure adaptation.
Yeah.
But there's no evidence that in fact, I think we've kind of given up on the idea of evolution. The theory of evolution as articulated by Darwin is like kind of not true.
Okay, so he just said that he thinks that we have given up on the idea of evolution and that the notion of evolution by natural selection as presented by Charles Darwin is not true. This is utterly incomprehensible, since if scientists had given up on evolution, why is it that in pretty much every single new description of a new species of animal, scientists are constantly running phylogenetic analyses using their physical traits and often genetic data to see what it's most closely related to? Why is it that we can use those data and the fossil record to map the evolutionary history of lineages of organisms going back tens to hundreds of millions of years? Scientific papers are regularly doing this. If scientists had done away with the idea of evolution, why would they do that? Why would they try to understand evolutionary relationships if evolution was a rejected theory? The next part of this clip is also very confusing.
In what sense?
Well, in the most basic sense, the idea that, all life emerged from a single cell organism and over time, and there would be a fossil record of that, and there's not.
Not only do we have direct genetic evidence that all life on Earth is directly descended from a universal common ancestor, which would have to be single-celled since it's the ancestor of both single-celled and multi-celled organisms, but the notion that we would have to have a fossil record of the transition from single-celled to multi-celled life is, frankly, absurd, since we're talking about literal single cells here, with no grain agglutination or shell coverage. This is not something that you would expect to fossilize under the vast majority of conditions, because it's basically just a phospholipid membrane, some genetic material, some proteins, things like that, the makeup of a cell. And what would you even want a fossil that meets those criteria to show? But despite me saying that, we actually do have some exceptionally ancient fossils of single-celled organisms from the Apex Chert Formation in northwest Australia, as were described by Dr. J. William Schopf and colleagues in a paper in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science, or PNAS, in 2017. The Apex Chert dates to around 3.45 billion years in age and seems to precede the origin of multi-celled life. So, the oldest known things that we have are single-celled, and there are plenty of much younger fossils of multicellular life. And genetic evidence tells us that multicellularity has evolved multiple times independently, including several times among organisms that independently evolved into seaweeds. So, we have the evidence that you are saying we don't have, Tucker. Please, just read a biology textbook, look at the references, and dive into the scientific literature. I promise you will be fascinated.
And
there's not a fossil record of transitionary species, like species that are adapting to its environment.
There's tons of record of adaptation, and you see it in your own life. I mean, I have a lot of dogs. I see adaptation in dogs, through the litter to litter. But no, there's no evidence at all zero, that people evolve seamlessly from a single cell amoeba. No, there's not. There's no chain in the fossil record of that at all.
Okay, so we have a lot of things to cover here. First, Tucker claims that he sees adaptation from litter to litter in dogs he keeps. Now, while selective breeding is a thing with dogs, and you can, as a result, see distinct, intentionally designed changes in litter, that's not adaptation, since the survival of the puppies are not dependent upon an environmental variable in which only the puppies that are capable of surviving in that particular environment will do so, resulting in changes to a population over time as it gets better at surviving in that environment. What Tucker is talking about here is intraspecific variability, i.e. different dogs looking different from one another within litters due to inheriting different combinations of genes. He then says that there is no evidence for humans evolving seamlessly from a single-celled organism, and so we need to address what he means by seamlessly. Does he mean that we should have every single step in human evolution covered within the fossil record? If he does, that's absurd. The conditions for fossilization are very, very rare, and so there are always going to be massive gaps in the fossil record of any organism. It's why in my videos I never feel comfortable usually saying when a specific group of organisms first appeared and when a specific group of organisms went extinct. That said, let's have a little exercise now investigating the evolutionary history of humans. We know, thanks to both our extremely similar skeletons and our genetics, that we are most closely related to the bonobos and chimpanzees. We also know that a number of extinct species within our own genus Homo did exist in the past from fossils, some of which seem to show a gradation towards traits that we have in our species. And we have fossils from a number of apparent precursor apes, such as the upright walking Australopithecus. Things did get a bit more complicated regarding Australopithecus this week, thanks to a brand new paper that I've attached in the description, which suggests that the upright posture of Australopithecus, which we humans intended, might have come from an even older ape, and that we and Australopithecus both inherited that from a common ancestor, indicating that Australopithecus might not have actually been our ancestor, but might have been the ancestor of chimpanzees, which could have then secondarily evolved knuckle walking. Whatever the case though, Australopithecus tells us with certainty that apes have been walking upright for several million years just like humans, and based on the next paper I'm going to talk about, possibly over 10 million years. What is that next paper, and why do I say that in relation to the findings of that paper? Well, Tucker should really at least skim read this overview of human evolution from 2021 by Sergio Almesiger and colleagues, which I've linked in the description, which covers the fossil evidence for our relationships with other hominins, finding on the basis of a number of lines of evidence, including genetics and the fossil record, that the ancestor of humans separated from the ancestor of chimpanzees around 9 million years ago. So we can at least roughly fill that chunk of time in. So now that studies like that one and many, many, many others have given us a good idea of where humans stand in terms of the evolution of apes, let's go back further in time and look at the ancestor of those apes. Now, as Almesiger et al. Tell us, the apes are the sister taxon of the Old World monkeys, which together form a clade referred to as the catarrhines. So, what about the catarrhines? Well, the oldest known fossil catarrhines date to around 20 million years ago, as discussed in this review of the group by Terry Harrison, which I've attached in the description. But Harrison notes that phylogenetic analyses of the catarrhines indicate that the group probably originated as far back as around 40 million years ago. So, if humans are apes, and apes are a kind of catarrhine, and catarrhines are a type of monkey, we then need to go back further to make this transition seamless, as requested by Tucker, and look for a monkey from before the catarrhines diverged from the other monkey clade, the platyrhines, for an even older ancestor or close relative of an ancestor of us. And lo and behold, the fossil record gives us tons. But for the sake of ease, I'm just going to go back to the oldest primates more broadly. We have Archicebus from 55 million years ago and Altaiatlaceus from 57 million years ago, which were both tarsier-like primitive primates or very close relatives of the first primates, which seem to indicate that primates as a group evolved within a few million years of the extinction of the non-avian dinosaurs. So anyway, we can theoretically trace our ancestry to as far back then as when our ancestors look something like tarsiers. Now, primates are of course a type of placental mammal, and the fossil record of that group gets really complicated, so I'm just going to attach this paper by Maureen O'Leary in the comments, which covers the evidence that we have around the radiation of the placental mammals after the Cretaceous-Paleogene mass extinction. Honestly, I don't know how far back I need to go to satisfy Tucker here. I can keep going further and further back to look at the origins of the placental mammals, then look at the early non-troop mammal mammalia forms, then at the synapsids that they evolved from in the Triassic, then at the larger, more reptile-like synapsids that they evolved from in the Permian, then go back to the early Permian, and look at the stem amniotes like C. moria, then go back to the early amphibian-like primitive tetrapods that gave rise to them, reptiles, amphibians, synapsids, and a whole host of other extinct groups, or I go back even further to the primitive tetrapodomorphs, or further still, to the early lobed-finned fish, to things like Tiktaalik, with its shoulder girdles that might have helped them crawl on land. Or we can go back way further beyond the fish to look at the most primitive chordates, and then to their evolution among the sea squirts. Or look into the origins and relationships of the sea squirts and their most ancient fossil record. If you want a thorough video on every single thing we know about human evolution, going as far back as we can possibly go, I am happy to research and work on that. But to say that we don't have a seamless evolutionary lineage when we have a huge amount of evidence for what we evolved from is frankly quite silly. Hello dear viewers, I hope you're enjoying the video. It's time for the inaugural game of Rockman. What's Rockman and why am I putting this in the middle of my video? It's totally not just to farm for engagement, I want to have fun with you guys. Well, this is Rockman, and this is a series of letters. You see, I am planning to take over the world with my all-powerful Rockman. But you can stop me by guessing the letters in this geological phrase that will stop Rockman from being summoned. Every time you get a letter wrong, I will be putting a rock on one of these rocks until Rockman is complete. Every time you get a letter right, it goes on the board. If I win, the earth is mine. If you lose, you can pick a forfeit for me in the comments. Now, the most upvoted letter is the one that gets on here, so be sure to upvote letters you agree with, and feel free to suggest a forfeit in the comments. Hope you have fun. Now back to our regularly scheduled roast of Tucker Carlson.
And that's why you don't actually hear people, you hear them make reference to evolution because the theory of adaptation is clearly, obviously true. But Darwin's theory's totally that's why it's still a theory almost 200 years later.
So I suppose you don't believe in the theory of gravity then, because it's called a theory and has been since 1687. We basically refer to any idea that has a lot of evidence behind it a theory in science, since the idea is that all theories should be tested and either bolstered or thrown out with more evidence. The evidence for evolution is supported by thousands of transitional fossils, and by literally all modern animals and their morphological and genetic similarities to one another.
No, we have not found that at all. And I can't even guess. I mean, I have my own theories on it, but they're not proven.
What are your theories?
God created people, distinctly, and animals. I mean, I think what every person on Earth thought.
Okay, so Tucker believes that God created us distinctly from all other life, despite the fact that we are demonstrably closely related to chimpanzees and bonobos on the basis of DNA and morphology. I have a feeling that Tucker did not do very well at biology class at school.
Until the mid-19th century, actually.
Right, but
it's not a new idea.
They didn't have computers. They didn't have a general understanding that we have today of the process.
Do you think we understand more now?
Yes.
Really?
You don't think that we understand more today?
We understand way less.
So now, Tucker claims that we understand evolution way less than we did 200 years ago, despite the discovery of genetics, despite the fact that every year we're filling in gaps in the fossil record, that being the evolutionary record, with more and more specimens, despite the fact that we're getting more and more DNA samples every year from more and more modern and recently extinct animals, that help us to fill in more and more parts of the puzzle. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Like up is down, like left is right, like logic is to eat random mushrooms and reason is to go on a train without checking where it's going and no ticket. How does Tucker justify that we understand evolution less now than we did before the discovery of genetics?
We understand so little that we're actually sitting here allowing a bunch of greedy, stupid, childless software engineers in Northern California to flirt with the extinction of mankind.
Okay, do I even need to respond to that? Childless software engineers in California. I'm not sure why either of those details are important, or what they're backed up by or based on, and apparently they are somehow flirting with the extinction of humankind, or something, and that is why we don't understand evolution anymore. Mr. Carlson, are you high? Special thanks go out to my wonderful patrons, Jean and Eric Feenstra, and to my one-time Ko-fi donator, Judith Ruck, for supporting the channel. It really means a lot, and it is hugely appreciated. Patrons got this video one day early, so if you want to get them alongside other perks, please support me on there. And remember that if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to show your appreciation by liking, subscribing, and ringing the little bell. I'll probably be able to get another video out next week, but I should probably tell you what my next big videos are. I have a big video planned about Dakota Raptor. I have a big video planned about the climate change denial of Jordan Peterson, and I have a big video planned about the Mud Fossil University Triassic timeline, because, yes, he challenged geologists to answer him. I've also got videos planned on the Albertosaurinae. I've got a video responding to another YouTuber's video, which is not a pseudoscience YouTuber. She just said some things which I feel misled her audience when it came to the influence of sexual selection on human evolution. I've got a whole load of videos as well planned about forearms, about geology in general, and about paleontology in general. I hope you enjoy what's coming, and I look forward to entertaining and interesting you in the near future. I've been DJ King, signing off.